Ashley's President's Day sale has been extended. For a limited time, feel the freedom to shop incredible hot buys. Your style, your choice, all at an unbeatable price. Plus, pay over time with 60 months special financing. From bedroom looks to living room styles and every room in between. Our hot buys make saving big and styling your space easier than ever. Only at Ashley. Subject to credit approval. Minimum monthly payments required. See store for details.
I'd like to welcome you all out to SEMPA. Thank you. And thank you to the Timber Room. So it's our privilege tonight to have Lucy LaFreak. We were just listening to her album that came out in 2023, and she co-founded Sub 49, and multi-genre artist. And please take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's quite the pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone here who decided to come in person. Really appreciate you coming out. It makes all of this worth it for me. And want to give a shout out to anyone watching the live stream as well. Gotta give a special shout out to Novel and Frida at home. Novel is my partner and Frida is our roommate for one more day. We're in the process of moving and it's very sad, but I told them I would give them a shout out. Well, gosh, where to start? I want to provide a caveat. I'm not as prepared as I usually am. I feel like I've aged 100 years in the last 30 days for obvious reasons. And usually I would have like some sort of like witty PowerPoint or, agenda or something like that. Let's just keep this nice and casual, nice and freeform. Yeah, does that sound good to y'all? Great. Okay. So let's just keep it open-ended as we go. If you have a comment or question, feel free to raise your hand. I can't see y'all too well just because of the projector light. I'll do my best to see you though, and just be patient with me. Okay. I'm gonna first start out with like my musical journey. I think that's helpful for anyone to hear. Because, how the hell did you even get here in the first place, right? For me, my musical journey started when I was like 8 years old. That's when I first started writing music. Was it good music? I don't know. But it was from a young age that I started taking an interest in songwriting, and it's always been a part of my journey. Like I can't imagine myself not writing music at any point. It's just the easiest way for me to express myself. I remember there was one instance too where I didn't even know music theory yet, but when I was in elementary school, I had 12 songs in my head that were fully written, like rock songs, and then I created the CD cover for it and had all the track names and all the lyrics written out. It was all just in my head, I didn't even know how to play a guitar yet per se. Then I learned guitar after learning piano, and that's when I really started to learn music theory. I felt really grateful to have access to a teacher who was so well-versed in music theory, and that's what really took my writing to the next level. For anyone that hasn't learned music theory yet, you should. I'm going to say that. And I'm here to help with that, too, if at any point any of you ever need some pointers with it or anything like that. Yeah, and then once I learned how to play the guitar, I played in a band in junior high and high school. We spent 9 months preparing for the junior high battle of the bands, it was the biggest deal in the world. And then we did that, and then we placed third in a battle of the bands a month after that. And it was oh, okay, maybe we're actually kind of good at this thing. And then we played at Showbox at the Market, Studio 7, rest in peace. As well as some other venues in Seattle. So getting that experience at a young age, I think, only sparked the fire a bit more. Like most bands, we fell apart for the stereotypical reasons that most bands fall apart. And we tried to start a second band that was an offshoot of the first. It didn't quite work out. So after that, I was just kind of lost and confused, and I was just writing songs on my acoustic guitar, and doing that for a bit. And when I was in high school, my mom came back from a European cruise, and all she could listen to was a 9.5. And I was such an angsty grunge kid in high school, and I was oh my God, she's really into this dance music. And then I came home from school one day, and I started dancing to said dance music, and then it clicked. And I haven't turned back. That's when I started raving as soon as I got into college. And then, yeah, I don't know, I thought to myself, dang, if these producers can make music like this, why can't I? So I downloaded Ableton back in 2013. And I've been, messing around with Ableton ever since. It's been a lot of fun. It's kind of like having a band, but you're the band, and you decide, what every aspect of the arrangement looks like what all the harmonies sound like. It's very liberating, I feel like. Goes without saying, it's a hard road. I had ambitions of learning how to DJ for a long time, and I just never got around to it. I was caught up with a lot of stuff in college that was very academic focused, and but I kept producing. I kept messing around and making just the worst songs you've ever heard. And then finally in early 2018, I decided to really devote myself to the craft, and I got a mentor. I picked up DJing, which was fairly quick for me. Luckily, I had a mentor who had access to CDJs, so that's what I learned on, which definitely made the process of taking that next step of trying to get bookings a little easier. And then it was August of 2018 when I got my first major booking at Q Nightclub. I still remember to this day, I didn't even know how to set stuff up in Rekordbox yet. So everything was just waveforms. I didn't even know the BPMs of each track. So I was just doing everything completely by ear, like an old school DJ, just anxious out of my mind. And I've come a long way since, I'm happy to say. And then it was in December of that year that myself and 7 other folks founded Sub 49. And at the time, it was a collective. We had a label arm, Sub 49 Records, and then the collective stuff. And that's how we used to divide it. It was okay, we're going to throw shows, and then we're going to build a presence online through the label. And that label is still alive and well today, 6 years later, I'm proud to say, which if any of you follow labels, most die within 3 years. The fact that it's still going strong and that we're still putting out music from artists around the world makes me so happy. And the reason that it's been able to last that long is because we've continued to pass the baton for who takes leadership. Because I don't know if y'all could probably guess it burns you out real quick running a label. It's very thankless work. You don't make any money doing it, by the way, so don't even go down that road unless you're willing to lose some bucks. And it can just be very taxing because you have to run the back end of the label, you have to field tracks from folks, you have to make the hard decision of what you accept and what you don't accept, which is really tough because you never want to hurt someone's feelings or make them feel like their track isn't good enough. Sometimes it's just not a good fit, right? But luckily, we've been able to pass the baton on between different members of the collective, and that's why we're still alive today. In fact, Sub 49's been throwing shows at Chop Suey most recently. It's one of 2 house music shows currently taking place at Chop Suey, the other of which y'all are probably familiar with, Flammable. So it feels good to still be leaving our mark on the community. Jimmy Moore, who goes by James Gatz, is casting a different vision for the label, and I think he has a great vision. He's been running everything very well. Grayson as well, who goes by he used to go by Gray Matter, now he goes by Grayson Rose. He has also done a tremendous amount of work for the label over the years, and everyone in the collective has definitely pitched in, quite a bit to make that label survive the way it does today. But yeah, it feels good to build something with folks and have it still survive after all these years. When I was starting to DJ back in 2018, I DJ'd under the name Minor. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with that project. I had the pleasure of releasing on a number of labels, and things were much easier for me back then because, I hadn't come out yet. And as soon as I came out in the tail end of 2020, I found out very quickly just how different the industry can be towards you as soon as you put a dress on. It's really crazy, actually. But I've had a lot of fun since. I started going by Lucy LaFreak back in the tail end of 2022, I want to say. And at that point, I think I was done with the minor project in the sense that I just didn't feel like it reflected me anymore. And I wanted to go forth with a name that felt closer to who I am. And I just put out an album because why not? You know, I had a bunch of tracks I was sitting on. I put them out. Now they're out in the world. Thank you so much, by the way, for playing the album at the beginning. And it's funny because now I listen to the album and I'm like, oh, I should have done that. Testing. Oh, the battery's out? Okay, well, I can project. It's kind of funny how you can like put out such a large body of work and then you like listen back to it a year later. Like, oh, maybe I should have sidechained that differently, or maybe I should have like used a different synth, or. Hello. Thank you for the rapid response there. That was very impressive. Thank you. And since then I haven't really put anything out. I actually didn't put out a single track in the year 2024. I've been a lot more under the radar, but I did co-produce an entire project with my friend, and he introduced those tracks last year at a festival. It was really fun to like just make music without any intention of putting any of it out and sort of putting it in my friend's hands, who's ultimately DJing the tracks. And it felt good to sort of take a back seat and sort of behind the curtains approach with producing. And I'm continuing to work on that project with him. But I'm also sitting on a lot of music that I haven't really done anything with, to be honest. I'm also part of a duo called Sporadica. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar. It's with my partner, Novel Natura. And they are just such a talented person in general. They are an amazing DJ, an amazing producer, an amazing vocalist. You could probably guess why we work so well together. But we put out an entire album between the two of us in the year 2023 as well. And so for that project, for my individual stuff, sitting on quite a few tracks and just haven't done anything with them. But I'm taking my time because I'm sure, as y'all are familiar with as well, it takes a lot of money to properly promote your music. Like, it's like you work so hard on writing music and like putting all the final touches on it. Maybe you pay for someone to master it. Maybe you pay for someone to make the album art, you know. And then once it goes out, it's like you want people to hear it, right? And executing a marketing plan for a track, EP, album, it can definitely, cost quite a bit if you're doing it right. Even just the slog of trying to like market it by word of mouth can be really challenging. So, I'm sitting on stuff for now. I actually have some ideas I'm going to show you today, so I'm very excited to do that. I haven't done anything with these, and I've barely shown them to anyone. So hopefully you enjoy them. We're going to kind of do that first, because that's going to set the stage for the live demonstration I have prepared for y'all. I made a track specifically for this session, so only Novel has heard it so far. And within that Ableton project, we're going to work on a vocal chop together. And the whole idea with that is to hopefully show you just like some fun ways you can take a vocal audio file and just like turn it into an instrument, to add something to whatever you're making, to give it a little spice. That's something that has really changed things for me in recent years. Like, instead of just relying on a typical top line, like really like digging into the approach that artists like DJ Snake, Skrillex, etc. use to like create like a really memorable and melodic vocal chop that can really set you apart. The fun with that too is I've actually been using like acapellas I just rip off YouTube of like some of my favorite pop girlies, whether it's like Adele, Alicia Keys, Chappell Roan, like anyone with a wonderful voice. You can just take that acapella, throw it in, chop it up, and you can't even necessarily tell that it's them. But you can also just take vocal audio files off Splice, throw them in, and use that as well if you're wanting to go for like a purely royalty-free approach. Either way, my goal today is to hopefully give you another tool in your arsenal to experiment with and try it out. And I think it applies to really any electronic genre. Like I can't think of a genre that vocal chops can't be helpful in, whether it's like a main top line, something that's in the background, sprinkle in as like some ear candy. And chances are you probably hear vocal chops in a lot of your favorite artists' tunes. They can be very versatile and adaptable. Before I continue, I just want to take a poll of everyone in here. How many of you use Ableton? Okay, a vast majority of the room. Wow. Okay, how about FL Studio? Some Fruity Loops gang? No? Oh, that's sad. I know a lot of really awesome producers that use FL Studio, and honestly, I get kind of jealous of people that use FL Studio. I'm like, wow, like, I don't know, y'all be making some amazing music. How about Logic? Yes? Okay, we got, so you're in Ableton and Logic.
Yeah. I started on Logic in like 2004.
Okay.
And then moved to Ableton when I matured.
Awesome. It's really funny you say that because Novel actually does a lot of their creative work in Logic, and then they move everything over to Ableton to do more of the technical stuff. I think there's really no one right way to use a DAW. There's no like best DAW per se. I kind of think of Ableton as like the Microsoft Excel of DAWs. It's just, like all you have to do is plug an equation in there and it does its thing, right? But I mean, like I said, I like low key like have envy for folks that use FL Studio. I think there's plenty of well-established producers that represent every DAW. For those who haven't raised their hands, if you want to just shout out what you're using, because I know there's like plenty of other DAWs. Oh, awesome. I've heard nothing but good things about Bitwig. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I feel like I have an appreciation for people that use Bitwig because it's like a little more like, you'll be our fringe lord for the evening. Anyone else? Oh, yes. Okay, that's like a very OG DAW. That's amazing. Great. So we have some pretty good representation. All of you Ableton folks are in for a treat because that's what I use, and that's what I'll be doing the demonstration with tonight. It should be pretty applicable to like all DAWs. All DAWs have their like slight nuances and differences. So if you have specific questions around your DAW, I'm probably not going to be able to answer your question, just a heads up, because I've never been in FL or Logic or anything like that. But if the question is kind of more about theory, application, use, etc., I can do my best. But great. Wonderful. So I think what I'm going to do is show you at least one of these IDs, if y'all don't mind. And these IDs are kind of the direction I've been going recently as an artist, kind of more in the area of like 140 wave, sort of kind of like moody bass music. I don't know. So I'm going to play one of these tracks for you, and then field any questions about the track if any of y'all have any, and then we'll get into the live demonstration. Does that sound good to y'all? Wonderful. Okay. So with this one, just want to provide a little introduction to this one. So this one actually utilizes an Adele vocal sample. You may notice her voice, you may not. This vocal chop is incredibly simple, but it's actually, I think, quite effective. So yeah, hope you enjoy, and hopefully the volume is set at a good spot. Can you all hear that okay? Okay. Cool. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind. So that's just like one of 3 IDs that I've worked on that are kind of more in this realm of like melodic bass music. Been very inspired recently by 140 artists like Taiki Newlight. Yes, he is just amazing, isn't he? I followed him, gosh, like so long ago, back when he was putting stuff out on Night Bass. But his 140 stuff is just on another level. I mean, it seems like he's really like hit like God mode with the 140 stuff. I mean, he had a song end up in what was it, a Porsche commercial? I mean, it's just crazy. But other artists in that realm that have been inspiring me recently as well, Creso, Chesco are a couple, Locale. There's a lot of artists that are just making some really cool stuff in that vein at the moment. But with myself, like, I can never really stick too hard to any like genre specifications. I feel like no matter what I make, like it always comes out like a fusion of different things. I don't know. I just feel like that's more interesting to me. But yeah, if any of you like been experimenting with like 140, UKG, anything like that as of recently, yay, so exciting. Okay, yeah, we need more of that. Yes, so I'm glad y'all are working on that. I'll take a poll about what everyone's working on as far as genres later too. I want to make sure that, because I, to be honest, like I don't know if there's a genre I don't like. So I definitely want to know what all of you are working on specifically, and I hope we get a good taste of that with the track feedback section as well. But yeah, great. Well, thanks for taking a listen to that. I am going to open up Ableton now. Great. Are y'all can see that okay, right? Oh, good old Ableton. Yeah, this skin is interesting. It's like very bright. Oh, thanks for the adjustment. Great. I'll do my best to try to stay over to the side so y'all can kind of see what's happening. But I'm going to play this for y'all as well because it still needs a lot of work. I probably need to go back in and like make sure there's plenty of like ear candy and little like special Easter eggs in there. And there's no like vocal element quite yet. That's what we're going to make together today. But I'm going to show you where it's at right now. There is like, you know, a structure to it. So that way y'all know what it sounds like without any sort of vocal chop or anything like that. And then we can get into it. The vocal I've chosen for this, by the way, is Toxic by Britney Spears because it's in C minor, and that's what I was writing this in. So, yeah, and who doesn't love Britney Spears, you know? Great. So I'm going to play this for you now so we get a sense for where the track is at, and then we're going to add a little vocal chop. Great. Oh, thank you. Y'all are too sweet. Okay. I'm gonna give a little background as to what's going on here. I brought these three things up because whenever I'm playing back anything I'm working on in like the pre-mix down and mix down phase, I like to make sure that things are sounding at least like where they're supposed to be with this like really scrappy mastering chain that I have down here. So y'all might be familiar with Fox and Go. It's definitely like what I use for all of my like spectrum reading stuff. I typically have it in master mode. That enables you to kind of see generally where volume levels are at without it being like too sporadic in the moment. It kind of gives you kind of more of like a idea of like, okay, is everything balanced in here? It also like provides a little bit of a better idea of where the high end is, because we actually perceive the high end to be louder than what meters typically tell us. So this mode actually compensates for that, which is helpful. This is stereo tool. I like having this too to kind of see like, well, how wide is the track? What's going on with the left and right? It can just kind of allow you to see like, oh, like, is it two mono? Is it two stereo? So that having clarity on that's really nice. And this is a WLM meter, just to kind of see where the LUFs are at for general loudness. I'm not really going to care too much about that until the mastering stage. But it's also helpful to see like, okay, is it hitting? You know, like typically for stuff that's like more bass music, like it has to be loud, right? Like sure, the loudness wars don't exist, but like people at a show expect that to like really slap the speakers with an aggressive force. And so it's just important to have that there too, to know like, okay, am I in the realm of like where I'm supposed to be with loudness? Like if you're producing a house track, like yeah, like -7, -8 can like get you far, but it's just kind of helpful for anyone working on like kind of more bass music stuff, like to have an idea of like, okay, like am I getting stuff loud enough? So that's why I brought those up. And then here on the mastering chain, you'll see I just have like just a simple glue compressor and limiter here. I like doing this when I'm working on stuff because I want to hear how things are hitting a limiter prior to truly mixing things down and then bring it to the mastering stage. Typically, if stuff sounds good when it's absolutely being slammed through a compressor and limiter, like in a very like janky way, the way this is set up, by the time you get to the mastering stage, it's just going to sound all the better because it's really going to highlight any conflict that you're hearing between different elements. It's also going to highlight to you, oh, like what do I need to EQ and cut so that things can really shine. So I'm not saying like brick wall your mix down project, but that's kind of the approach I like to take when I'm working on stuff, is like making sure I'm getting a proper listen on how it might sound once I get to the mastering stage in terms of loudness. After listening to that once, do any of you have any questions about anything that's going on with the track at the moment? Great. Oh. Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So typically, and this is the approach I take with most genres that are either broken beat or bass music based, like typically what I like to do to make sure that it has like a proper groove is I'll find like some interesting loop, and I process it in such a way that it kind of comes across more staccato, so it takes less room sonically. And then I sort of build all of the percussion around that. So essentially what I'm looking for is an interesting skeleton, which already has a groove, and then building around that so that I'm essentially creating a layered percussive approach that hopefully sounds interesting to the listener. So this is the loop In this case, I'm going to duck down a little bit so y'all can see it a little better. And if I solo it, what this sounds like. So it's like a whole built-out loop, but as you can tell, I took a little bit out of the low end here, and this is like a preset within FabFilter. It's helpful to kind of see what presets are already in here if you're like in a crunch and just wanting to try like a quick fix. But restore punch is typically what I like to use with any given like underlying drum loop I'm using. I'll show you the difference between with it on and off. So as you can probably tell, it just makes it a lot more staccato, which opens up a lot more space for other percussive elements and other elements in the track to shine in general. And then that's what really gives it kind of more of a skeleton feel as opposed to like being a full-blown, drum rack per se. And then I actually just threw sausage fattener on there because, as some of you may know, it actually has a built-in limiter. So in this case, I didn't even do anything with the knobs. I just quickly threw it in there because I saw that this was clipping. So just throwing that in there, that limiter ensures that it's not going to clip, and that will also create a lot more space for other elements to shine as well. And then the only other thing I have going on is like this lovely hat. I'm probably going to add some more percussion, to be honest. It's pretty bare, but yeah, I have this kind of like pans just a little bit to the left. That's a rule of thumb that I typically use is like cymbals. I like to pan just slightly to the right or left, so that way it's not directly over center. I think I saw, who did I post that trick? I think it was Mr. Carmack, and I was like, oh, literally like soak up any tips you find on the internet from real producers that are doing the thing because they know stuff better than anyone. So I got this pan slightly to the left. Got nothing else going on. It just sounds great as is, honestly. And then on the perks bus, I just add a little dirt in there. This is like a preset you'll find under erosion, which is a really nifty tool for just applying a little dirt to your percussion. I would show you kind of, it's a very subtle difference, and you'll see that this is kind of causing some noise in the low end. But it just adds like a little bit of grit to your drums that make them sound a little more like alive. I have a little channel EQ in here. Channel EQ I absolutely love for like subtle adjustments because you only have 3 knobs. So if you're just looking to like put some broad strokes on a sound, this is great for that. Drum bus is great and notorious for adding some real like crunch and crispness to your drums. There's a lot you can do with drum bus that's really lovely. Some EQing as well, and then I typically throw like a mix gel on there as well, just to provide some slight compression. And again, it's all about creating more headroom for other elements to shine and sonically fit in with the drums. So I tend to find that this specific preset works pretty well to tame the percussion just enough to shine really well. In addition to sort of the percussion I have going on, I have 2 like snares that are layered on top of each other. One only hits every looks like 4 bars or so. That's the sort of more reverby snare that you're hearing layered on top of this like regular one. And then I've got 2 kicks layered on top of each other. I'm actually going to show you what they sound like together and like separate. So it's like pretty powerful, right? So one's kind of more of like a knock, and the other is kind of more of a boom. And yeah, as you can see here, I actually did just like a very slight like pull here on this sound wave, so that way we're hearing the punch of the top knock, but then the boom is coming through just as well. Making sure that this transient is moved up just a tad makes space for this like initial knock to really shine. So yeah, and I think I did the same, for this kind of snare layering as well. Just pulled up this transient ever so slightly, so that way we're really just getting the tail end of that, like the reverby part of that snare, and still allowing the main snare to hit with that main transient. Does that kind of like help pull back the curtain a little bit on what's going on there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
Of course. Does anyone else have any questions around the project as it currently stands?
One more, please. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that talking about the compressor and limiter, the limiter is quite a bit of compression actually to make it very dense.
Mm-hmm.
How do you typically know that quite a bit is enough? That how much do you want to compress the sound so that it's how to find the balance between being lively and dynamic at
Mm-hmm.
the same time how
Oh, that's a question as old as time, and I'm so glad you asked it. I'm sure every producer has a different philosophy on it. Like there are folks who make mostly like house, for instance, and you don't really want to like slam stuff in house music unless you're making like just like tear out bass house, which thank God that's like still back in 2015 and didn't, no offense. I just think the bass house nowadays is a lot more nuanced and like groovy, like typical house music. But I think it really depends on the genre. I think it depends on your sound and approach. I think a lot of snobs on the internet will tell you like, oh, don't slam stuff too hard in the mix down phase. But then you'll learn like, one of your favorite producers will like slam a limiter on like a hi-hat and you'll think, well, that doesn't make conventional sense, but it works. So I think really it's about finding your sound and what you like to do. If it sounds good, it sounds good. And typically I only throw a limiter on an individual track or bus in the mix down phase if it's clipping. And it's just to throw that in there and make sure that we're not getting any clipping prior to the mix down process. And sometimes too, like, I don't know if y'all have experienced this. It's when you're in the mix down phase, it can be really hard to get a sound to like cut through the way it should. Vocals especially. I think in some cases, if you're really struggling to like find space for like a specific element, like why not try slamming it and just kind of see how it sounds? Sometimes like when elements are a little too dynamic in the mix, squishing it just enough to like cut through and find space amongst all the other elements, it can work out really well. And people like to talk smack on Sausage Fattener, but Taiki, who I mentioned earlier, he actually uses Sausage Fattener in his mastering chain for his limiter. So you know what? Whatever works. That's what I say. A lot of people like to speak in absolutes with music production, and there's a million ways to do so many different things. But again, I think it just depends on genre, your specific style, and like what the individual track needs. Because every track is just going to have like different sonic problems that come up. So sometimes it'll make sense and sometimes it doesn't. By no means like just, slam stuff so hard that it becomes like a giant brick wall. But if you just need something to cut through a little extra and you're like kind of hitting a wall with all of the EQing, why not just give it a try? But yeah, really great question. Hopefully that lets you in on my philosophy. Everyone has different thoughts on it, but any other questions? Yes. Sure. Yeah, I would love to. And I actually tried some approaches with this bass that are a little different than usual. So what I have going on here is like a couple of layers of what I believe is the same patch and then a sub-layer underneath. Essentially what I did is I made the sound within Serum first, but because there's like a lot of pitch bending going on, as you could probably hear and notice, a lot of automation and stuff, I duplicated that Serum synth into the sub channel, and then I just isolated the sub within Serum. So that way it has the same automation in terms of pitch and everything like that as the original bass sound. But we're just getting the sub. I like to separate the sub from the rest of the synth patch usually, but I'll keep the sub included in the original sound, and I just EQ accordingly. So that way you still get that low end warmth, and you're not missing that. It can sound kind of clunky if there's just like a random dip in like the 100 to 300 range. So I try to avoid that. But with this first bass sound, I know there's like a second one that comes up in the second drop. Essentially what I did here is I took like what's like a preset and then just like sort of messed with it and like played with it. And there's already all these like automations built in. But with this specific track, I wanted to like create that sort of pitch bend vibe to make it sound like a lot less like static and make it sound a little more like, I guess, lively, if you will, if that makes sense. And with these wavetables, like it's really like nothing like too crazy, honestly. Like here, I'll play the isolated bass bus so you can kind of see what's going on. So it's just like a wall of sound, really. But you just have like a little bit of automation going on here. And really the star of the show is just like this pitch bend slider down here. Because otherwise it's just like an aggressive wall of sound. So to me, I think this like automation of the pitch bending is actually what gives the sound its like real character. Here. So with this wavetable, as you can see, the unison is set to 2 on each, so it's like a little wide. But if we solo this and we look at the stereo, there's a little bit of width there, and really where that width is coming from is more from the effects than anything, like hyper. That's kind of the whole point of this, is to sort of give it a little more width. There's like a tad bit of reverb on there, which will also give it a little bit of width in the stereo field. Other than that, no, it's really just like set to 2 on each. I mean, any wider than that, and I think, I don't know, it might be a little too intense. I'm also, if I remember correctly, I'm also using this plugin. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar. It's actually one that Infected Mushroom created, and it's really nifty. It widens your sound without causing phase interference. So you can widen your sound as much as you want and not have to worry about any phasing, which is pretty nifty. And it's really not like too expensive of a plugin. I think this is like $30. Definitely a nifty one to have in your arsenal if you're wanting to get just a little more width. Oh, it's free. Lovely. Yeah, all the more reason to scoop it up. Any free plugins you should just download for no reason. Just have them, you know? You never know when you're going to need them. And then like with the main sound design, like with this sound, it's just like so much processing going on. There's a little bit of erosion in the high end. That's what kind of gives it sort of like a downsample sound in this range. Thermal is a lovely distortion plugin. I'm a big fan. There's a lot of like really awesome presets that it has you can just sort of play around with. In this case, we're using like this one. It just gives it like just that little extra grit and dynamic saturation that you're just not going to get with a lot of Ableton saturation that's sort of stock. Got an OTT on there because, you know, bass music, why not? Got some Pro C2 going on for a little compression. And then when it becomes really staccato in the second part of that drop, I'm actually sidechain gating it to the percussion. That's what gives it that groove and allows it to sort of take a backseat to everything else that's going on. Sidechain gating is actually like a really nifty trick if you're like wanting to like establish a groove with the sound. In this case, I'm just sidechain gating it to this drum loop. So again, the groove really becomes the backbone in a lot of ways. And I have that automated to go on in the second half of that drop. So that's the first kind of major bass patch. And then in the second drop, like it's sort of, we use the initial bass sound to transition into a different sound. And that's why like you kind of hear that like major pitch up happen. And that's actually why I have this separate channel as well, because I had to change some of the parameters on the pitch building to make sure that I could like create that riser effect. But this one, to keep it consistent with the other patch I made, I just like copied over all of the same processing and sort of adjusted it accordingly. And then this is like just like a DMB roller preset that I sort of adjusted with like different wavetables to kind of like change up the sound a little bit. Got a lot of things. I actually turned off the hyper and chorus on the preset because the wider is already on there, and because that's already on there, you don't really want to widen it and then widen it some more. That can cause like some weird sonic stuff. So typically, rule of thumb, I try to just keep to like one widening method if possible. But yeah, a lot of stuff going on here to create that sort of beefy sound. I typically like to use tape saturation within Serum. A fun fact, the difference. Does anybody in here know the difference between tube and tape saturation? This is just a fun little pop quiz question. Okay, so this is fun. I learned this from one of my mentors. Tube saturation, it highlights all of the odd numbered frequencies. Tape saturation highlights all of the even ones. It's interesting. So if you mix a good use of tube and tape saturation together throughout the track and your mastering process, you're actually going to get like a saturation that's yielding like all of the frequencies, not just like some of them. So within Serum, I like to use tape, as well as like whenever I master tracks, I like to have like just a tad bit of tape saturation in the very beginning of the mastering chain. But I like to make sure that there's plenty of tube saturation and like Ableton stock saturation in there as well. That just all works to provide like a full, kind of more dynamic sound, I would say. Any other questions about the bass patches and what's going on there? No? Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on to the demonstration? Great. Y'all are a lovely audience, by the way. Great. So as I promised, so I already loaded this audio sample in here. I'm going to delete this though, because I'm going to show you like how I did this, in case that's unfamiliar for folks. So what I love about Ableton is if you just create a MIDI track, you'll see like there's nothing here as far as the instrument or whatever, but you can just drag an audio sample in here and it'll automatically put it into sampler for you. So I need to like move this over, I think. Just hang tight, y'all. I'm gonna like, there we go. Okay. So you can just go right to your downloads, like just drop it right in there. Oh, it's the wrong file. Okay, so you're going to take like the original audio file, drop it in there. And what that does is it already just like creates a sampler for you. And then essentially use like this slice feature. And you know, we're actually, I think we want to do that, if I remember correctly. Actually, I think we're going to pull that in here. Great. So what this slice feature does, it can sort of take any audio sample, especially like an a cappella or any vocal sample you have, and just like chop it up. And what does that mean? Like, if you look in here, all of these are like different transients that are being separated from each other. And then if you play like any key on the keyboard or you write in any MIDI, it'll correspond to like a different chunk of the audio sample. And that's what creates this like really interesting like vocal chop approach, where you can just kind of like play around and create a whole new instrument from a vocal that already exists. Typically for this too, I like to make sure that I'm setting the playback to poly, because I want the original width in the vocal to come through. And then slice by transient, and then you can even play around with these to like kind of fine tune the envelope. And yeah, I already have like something written in here just to kind of provide an example. And I'll play this for you so you can kind of hear what it sounds like.
I'm can't you.
So you get the idea, and I'm not too like happy with how this chop is sounding, but I was just kind of playing around with it last night to kind of see, like, you know, what kind of plosives we can play around with. And what I did prior to having just these notes selected is I used this like nifty feature up here called fold. If you click on that, you'll see this is like the whole expanse of different MIDI notes you can select. Last night, I like highlighted every single plosive by just writing like every possible note I could, and then I deleted any note I didn't like, hit fold, and it only gives you those to choose from. So that can be like a really nifty tool when you're making a vocal chop. You can kind of go through and be like, I don't know if I want to use these like really breathy plosives. And then, yeah, it kind of like narrows down what you can choose from to use. So yeah, any questions so far? I just want to make sure y'all are tracking. We all good? Cool. So what we're going to do, since we've already kind of set it up, I'm going to create another MIDI track really quick. And then given that the track already has a lot going on, I think a simpler vocal chop will probably suit it better. So let's see what we can make together. Great. The shortcut for that I used, by the way, was Shift-Command-T. I find myself using that shortcut more so than anything else, I think. Just wanted to provide that in case you're wondering. Great. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like create... I'm not going to do that. No, didn't want to do that either. Just a second, y'all. There we go. So that was Shift-Command-M to create the MIDI clip. And because we've already isolated... Oh, we haven't really isolated the note. Okay, just a second. Hang tight. What I'm going to do instead is I'm actually going to duplicate this because we've already... So we've already like decided within this MIDI track like what we wanted to do as far as isolating these specific plosives. So duplicating this MIDI track probably makes more sense. And then I'm going to select all and delete so we can just kind of start from scratch here. So if we're looking for something more simple, we can kind of like... That's like a cool plosive. So maybe if we like space this out, I like to kind of take a very random approach with like the specific MIDI notes I'm selecting. Oh, and we're actually going to turn. Great. So that one's like pretty cool. Maybe. Great. Okay, so that was the original note I thought we were hearing. Maybe if we kind of spray these in there. It sounds kind of weird at the moment, but like if we put it into context, it can give us a better idea of like how it's sounding. So let's see how it sounds with the track. Let's listen to that again. This volume was set to -12. It's always so frustrating when it comes in like -12 by default. So let's hear that again. So it sounds like, I guess, somewhat interesting, but it's not really giving us much like, I don't know, it's not really like gripping me in. So maybe we'll keep these plosives. What is this one? Let's see. It's kind of a weird plosive. Let's try this one. Yes. Britney Spears Toxic. So that's why it's like really sultry sounding, which I love. Maybe we chop this up a little bit. Let's see how this sounds in context. See, that sounds a lot more compelling, right? In fact, I really like how this was sounding specifically. And I think if we choose a different note to kind of close out this little section, that'll be... Didn't hear that last note too well. Yeah, that one's kind of odd. Let's maybe try this one. Yeah, it's pretty nifty, huh? And the one other thing I might do here is actually, so this is an interesting feature as well, flipping between trigger and gate in this mode. Gate ensures that only the length of the MIDI is being let out with that specific audio segment instead of like triggering the entire segment to play, if that makes sense. So let's hear how it sounds with this mode turned on. So that way it kind of cuts it off a little better. And I might even shorten that a little bit just because I don't want to like have that be too dead of a giveaway as to what song it is. So let's maybe try this. Cool. So that way we still get that like sultry sound, but we cut it off before anyone can like clock it, which is kind of more ideal, right? You want it to be like, I feel like with a vocal chop, like you kind of want it to be mysterious. You don't want it to be too dead of a giveaway what you're sampling from. I don't know. I just hear splice vocals on tracks all the time from pretty big artists too, and I'm like, I've heard this before many times actually, and it's not as much of an element of surprise. Yes. Yeah, so when you're in the slice mode specifically, or even in the one-shot mode, it's similar. Yeah, and toggling back and forth between those, just to reiterate, the gate feature ensures that whatever audio segment it's selecting, it's only going to play it out for the length of that specific MIDI note, whereas trigger, it's going to trigger the entire audio segment, regardless of how long the MIDI note is. So yeah, it gives you a little more control too. So you can kind of change the length of the specific MIDI note if you want to let more of that audio segment in. But what gives you even more control as well is these parameters down here. in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you want to like make sure it's not like sounding as staccato, you can kind of give it a little more of a fade in, which I might want to do to kind of reduce the harshness of the chops. And then this allows you to make it even more staccato if you want. You can transpose it. I mean, luckily it's already in the key that we want, so we don't have to do that. Oh, and then I might want to warp it. Let's see how that sounds when I do that. Cool. Does that help explain that a little better? Oh, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the drum rack thing because that can be another way to do a vocal chop. Like you can like essentially take smaller audio samples, throw them into like each part of the drum rack, process each of them individually, and then sort of like play the vocal like a drum rack. That's the thing. I mean, there's so many ways to achieve like a vocal chop approach. For me, like the slicer is kind of nice because it sort of randomizes it to an extent, and I like that as a part of my creative process. It makes sure that like I'm not having too much control of what comes out. Like some of it's just left to fate, which I really enjoy. But yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up because yeah, like when I figured out what this did, like it just kind of opened up like a lot of opportunities for me within like the vocal chop world. Cool. So one other thing I might do is having a hard time like breaking through the track. So this is actually a situation where I might be a little ignorant and use sausage fattener just to get it to cut through a little better. Let's hear how it sounds in context. So that's definitely sounding like it melds with the track a little better. I don't know. How are y'all? Are y'all like digging that? Cool. I'm glad. Something I might do to kind of like change it up here on the back end. Oh, it's interesting how that happens now. Like since we only selected these three plosives, the fold isolates it to just these three. So I'm actually gonna select all of these and like be like, what happens if we just like shift these up an octave? Okay, literally all we did was just like shift it up an octave, and because it's like you're not dealing with notes, you're just dealing with like different vocal plosives, like just doing something random like that and boom, like we didn't even have to do anything, right? That's what I mean by like having fun with like having some randomness involved, because like when you're just flinging paint on a wall, you never know what you're going to create. And some of our favorite like electronic music tracks might have been made that way. I really want to make sure I illustrate that, and it's so important in the creative process to sort of like, I don't know, just kind of allow mistakes to happen too, because sometimes mistakes can be really good mistakes that end up like making something sound really cool. So let's run this back, just see how it sounds with the whole drop. I'm also going to get a little more movement happening with this vocal, so that way it kind of comes in and out. Typically what I like to do for this, there's like this auto pan preset called Subtle Stereo. So I'm just going to move this in here because we're already widening it from the get-go. This just adds a little bit of movement where it kind of goes back and forth, left and right. And I like that because it's barely noticeable, but it just kind of like gets it to move just enough to where it doesn't sound like too stagnant. And I also just want to make sure we have some reverb on here. Great, we do. Okay. Cool. So let's run it back to the beginning of the drop, see how it sounds, and then we can kind of flesh it out to the rest of the track. And then we can kind of run the track back and see how it sounds. Cool. On the fly, I was realizing like we should probably return back to the original like motif we had. So I just kind of like copied and pasted this pattern to end the drop. I think that's kind of nice because you get that little variation and then you kind of bring it back to what the listener is expecting. So I think that'll be effective. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of like incorporate it into the intro so we can like tease it and then like have it just really like come in hot on the drop. So I'm just going to do that really quick. And typically how I go about doing that is like, you know, just your good old auto filter. Gonna like, actually, you know what I'm going to do is I like using this specific like, it's not a low pass or a high pass. It's like I forget what you call it. Yes, thank you, band pass. And I like using this because like we can kind of sweep it up through the whole frequency range and then like automate it off for the drop. So that way we're teasing the listener with multiple like frequencies, but without like teasing the entire frequency range. Hope that makes sense. Let me kind of like, I think I might have turned the red. Yeah, we don't want that. So, and then we're going to automate the frequency here. I think that should be good. Then we're going to turn this off at the drop. So just to recap what I'm doing here is I'm sort of automating this like auto filter to sort of tease this vocal chop through the entire frequency range without giving it fully away until the drop. And that's what's really going to make sure that energy is high when we unveil the entire chop. One other thing I might do is just automate some like reverb to kind of like make sure it's coming in a little more ominous. Let's see how this sounds in context. So it's coming in a little too hot for my taste. What I might do, let's see how this sounds. Yeah, see what that's doing? It's hiding it a little better, making it just a tad bit more ominous. Cool. So that was close to what I wanted. I think the one thing I might change is like have it sort of become like this sort of pre-drop vocal thing. So that way, like, we introduce it a little more isolated right before the drop. I'm just going to run it back one more time to see how that hits. Cool. So yeah, I'm liking how that's sounding on the intro. It's like it keeps it ominous right up like until right before the drop. I think that's sounding effective. The one other thing I might do, if you're in Ableton, I can't stress enough like how much of a game changer these track delays are over here on the right. You can either create a track delay by putting a positive integer in here, or you can do a pre-delay sort of thing where you set it to a negative number. And what it does, it just slightly moves the track forward or backward relative to everything else. Really great for if you're trying to like give a little swing to your track, or like if you're making house music. I love like a little bit of a lazy hi-hat. So you put like 2 to 4 milliseconds of like track delay on that hi-hat, and it just causes it to like just lag ever so slightly. It can also be like a really helpful side chaining technique. Claude Von Stroke, otherwise known as Barclay Crenshaw, actually uses that as a major side chaining technique. It just kind of moves transients just ever so slightly to make sure that they don't like, interfere with each other too much. I might with the vocal, because we don't want it to like step on the toes of the other elements a little too much, I might just like set this to like 6 to give it a little more of like a lazy lag. I'm just going to show you what that difference sounds like when we like play it in the, maybe leading up to the drop. We can do that. So it's really subtle there, but it just creates that like little bit of separation that just like helps you to be able to hear the bass and the vocal just enough. But like that track delay, it just like does such a subtle job of side chaining in a way to where you're able to hear both elements, but they're not like maybe like 2 on top of each other. You don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say. So I'm just going to flesh this out to the rest of the track really quick. And for the sake of time, what I'm probably going to do is just like do some good old copy pasta. And we have this like little... Okay, so we're going to paste that here. Okay, so I'm just going to play the whole track back. Actually, I do want to make sure we have something in the space. Oh, no, not that. I'm just going to make this like, let's see what this... No, we don't want that. Sure, that works as a plosive. Cool. So maybe we'll make this into like a build-up sort of thing where we like, and then we can like use this nifty like divide by 2 button right there. And then we're gonna like maybe, yeah, okay. In context, I'll show you what that sounds like. Cool. Something else I want to show you really quick. There's so much to show y'all in so little time. I just want to show you like a nifty sidechaining trick with vocal elements I learned a while back from some producer friends out in, I think, are they living out in Kansas City? I believe so. They're called Disco Dick. It's a lovely name, honestly. But yeah, they're like a duo. And I remember I was like submitting to a label once upon a time, and they're like, oh yeah, if you just throw this like quick side chain to give the vocal a little more space, it'll just make it sound better. And I use it to this day. All I'm doing is just using like, whereas I'm using like the Live 8 compressor for everything else because it doesn't give you that weird click that the newer Ableton compressors have. I know it's kind of weird to use like a different version of compressor within like Ableton 10, but I swear by Live 8 compressor. I'm just using the regular one in this case, and I'm just like side chaining to the vocal ever so slightly. And I'm gonna like play this drop to kind of show you what that sounds like or what that looks like. So all it's doing is just ducking it ever so slightly anytime that vocal hits. It's like really tame. So it's not like you're like doing like insane side chaining there. But just that little bit just like gives the vocal a little more space to breathe relative to the other elements. Yeah, just wanted to show you that really quick. I'm going to run this track back. We're going to listen to the whole thing. And then I'm going to open it up to general Q&A, and then we'll do some track feedback. Does that sound good to y'all? Wonderful. Okay, let's give this a go. Thank you, y'all. You probably noticed some things I was doing on the fly as that was going on. I really like to do that. Like sometimes I'll loop like a given section of a track, or I'll just kind of play the full track through, and then as things come up, I'll just kind of do some things on the fly. Or I'll like look ahead and be like, oh, maybe I want to change that before this comes around, or maybe something didn't sound right with the first drop that I want to change with the second drop. So yeah, and actually on this outro, using that like specific auto filter, I like just use the auto filter that we use in these two sections, but I set it to this frequency, and something about that just sort of helps it to like just sound a little more fresh in the outro, I guess. Obviously, there's a lot of work left with this track, but hopefully this like helped show you like a way that you can like just use a vocal in a different way and like just have fun with it, you know, incorporate some randomness and chaos into your creative process to hopefully like make some happy mistakes. But now I'm going to open it up for general Q&A. It can be about this project specifically. It can just be about career stuff or other production-related questions you may have. Open to answering like any questions at all. So I'm going to hand it off to you now. Yes?
You talk about some producers taking a sample off the splice and just throwing it in without making it their own. Like, what are some ways you make a sample like your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and you know, there's nothing wrong with splice vocals per se. It's just kind of like when I'm listening to like a track from a bigger artist and I hear a vocal and then I figure out it's just from splice. It just kind of like, it doesn't cheapen it. I'm like, oh, I just wish they would have like done something just a little more creative with it. I think some different ways you can go about doing that. Well, for one, you can like pitch that vocal into a different key. That alone can like change a vocal so drastically. Chopping it up. Perhaps you like, you know, use just like a basic vocal, but you like clip certain segments and like reverse those parts of the audio clip, or I don't know, maybe you just make that original vocal sound better by layering it, maybe widening it a little bit, incorporating some processing. Maybe you put like just a slight flanger on it. I don't know, the possibilities I think are endless. But yeah, like something that comes with like being an A&R for a couple of labels is, I don't know, like you can only hear that sample like move your feet like this so many times before you're like, okay, this is getting old. So especially when you're submitting to labels, you want to make sure that if you are using a splice vocal, like how many people have used that vocal already? Are there ways that you can like change it in such a way that it just like elevates it? Or, you know, like, can you like maybe chop it to give it more of an interesting effect? Hopefully that helps answer your question a little bit. I think those are some different things you can try, but awesome. Okay, keep them coming. Yes.
When submitting to labels, what's a good way of gauging whether or not a label will actually help you, as opposed to like just self-releasing?
That's a great question. And that's really something you want to weigh when deciding, okay, do I self-release or do I use a label? Because like the benefit of using a label is labels that have been established, like they have brand recognition, they have a listener base, they tend to have like a marketing budget, and because, you know, it's in their interest to promote the track. And if you network appropriately with that label, like they might be able to put in a good word with like other folks they know, or put you into contact with an artist who's also released on the label. So there's a lot of like social value there. There's a lot of not having all of the promotion fall on you. That's not to say you shouldn't do any promotion when releasing with a label. I mean, the more you can prove to the label that you're like going to put your own weight behind it, the more likely they're going to be to like trust you and like work with you. But some labels, you know, if you go to their SoundCloud and it's just very apparent that they barely do any promotion, or maybe they're just like not going to get you farther in terms of recognition than where you're at now, then it might be better to self-release. And it really just depends on a number of things, but you should also look at like what the label does for artists. Like some labels will, put on showcases where they book producers that release with them. So that could be like a good booking opportunity if you're looking to get DJ gigs as well. Like, I don't know if like a label has like, say like a Miami Music Week showcase, like that's more likely to be of benefit than a label that maybe doesn't have that same logistical pull. But you might also look at other artists that are similar to your sound, see what labels they've released on, what kind of career trajectory they took. And that, I think, provides a pretty good roadmap, especially if you look at the labels they released on early on. I think about Sub 49, for instance. We've had artists who release with us go on to release on, like, Confession, Dim Mac, trying to think of, like, I think we had one artist release with us who ended up releasing on like Nightbase, for instance. So like there's a blueprint there, and we've helped folks like take that first step and then like kind of, I guess, approach bigger labels from there. I think it's helpful to know to like which labels are closed and which are open. Like some labels you can submit your tracks to openly. Some of them like they will only accept tracks like if they know you personally. So especially when you're first starting out, it's like, you can shoot your shot with those folks, but like the chances of you grabbing their attention is just so nil. But if they, happen to take a look at your SoundCloud and they see you've released with this label, that label, this, that, and the other, they could be like, oh, this artist like knows what they're doing. Like they released with our friends over at this label. Maybe we should, give their track a listen. So, that was like a little bit of a rant. Does that help answer your question a little bit as far as what to look for? Okay, wonderful. Great. If anyone, go ahead. Oh, great.
Have you ever recorded vocals for the purpose of chopping? What is your insight on that?
Oh, that's, I think, the best case scenario. I think, like anything else, like you should make sure that the recording is like quality enough, which really depends on a number of factors, like the recording environment, or like the processing. It helps to work with a vocalist that knows how to do their own vocal processing, because they're going to have much better insight on how to process their own vocal than if you were to like try to just take a stab at processing like someone else's vocals who maybe doesn't have that background and maybe they didn't like record it correctly or whatever the issue might be. But I think that's a great approach. And in fact, what I'd recommend for that is like use the recording to tell a story, right? Like maybe have there be like lyrics and like an actual like traditional lyric. And then in the drop, you chop it up a bit. Like I think we see that a lot with like DJ Snake and like artists like that. One song that comes to mind from him is a collaboration he did with Aluna George. I'm having a hard time remembering the exact name of the song, but Aluna's voice is just so lovely and like tells a story in the verse, and then in the drop, her vocal is chopped into this like really cool melody that becomes like the main hook of the track. So, I think that's the best approach too if you're trying to come across like unique. But you want to make sure that the original recording is really solid because, I don't know, like as it goes, like trash in, trash out. Like if the original recording is not like crystal clear enough to the point where you're having to do a bunch of like fixing work on it, like you can only process a track so much before it just starts to sound like really contrived and like weird and awkward in the rest of the mix. But yeah, definitely recommend that if you like have a vocalist you like to work with. In my case, like Novel and I've like done that with some Sporadica tracks. I want to say definitely worth a shot, and I think that's the most creative approach you can take, honestly. Yeah. Great. Oh, yep, in the back.
Do you do any other processing for your kicks besides adjusting the faded or
Yeah, that's. Oh, thank you. Yeah, with this one, so kind of like it's the same kind of a philosophy I like to use with samples as well. It's like trash in, trash out. If you like, really the sample selection is where is the most critical. So making sure that you have good samples to start with is like always a good first step. And like, to be honest, like there have been some times where I don't even necessarily process a kick because it sounds good as is. But in this case, because I'm layering a couple, I have this like preset called Kick Fixer that I've applied, and it just sounded good like right out of the box. This is like kind of like a dynamic EQ, which is kind of nice. Acoustic kick compressor, this is like a preset right here in Ableton. But Smack Attack is one of my favorite plugins for manipulating a kick, a snare, really anything where you're trying to shape the transient. In this case, like I just apply this specific setting and kind of scoop the tail a little bit. I have it set to clip. That tends to just have it smack a little harder. I'll show you what it sounds like with and without Smack Attack, because I think that's like what's doing the most work here, honestly. And if I take Smack Attack off, yeah, so you could probably tell the slight difference there. Like Smack Attack, just like it's like okay, you've already squished two kicks together. You use a compressor to kind of get those two to coalesce a little better, I guess you could say. And then the Smack Attack allows you to shape that into a whole new kick, honestly. So yeah, that's what I did with this specific kick. But you know, with any given kick, like it's always like requires a unique approach depending on what kind of kicks you're using. But yeah, hopefully peeling back the curtain on that helps a little bit. I can't recommend Smack Attack enough. It's great also for snares. Like I think, did I use it on the snare in this track? I didn't. You can put it on the bus or just on an individual snare, depending on what you're doing. Like I actually used Smack Attack with this snare, and I just applied it to the individual channel. If I take it off, it's really subtle. What am I even doing with the Smack Attack on this one? It's kind of like a similar idea, actually. So yeah, so really depends. Typically, my rule of thumb is like if I'm using like 2 layers to create a single sound, I'll typically apply processing to the master bus. So that way I'm treating it like it's just like a single kick as opposed to trying to process the 2 separately and then, you know, layer them. But in the case of the snare, since like I'm just layering it with this like more reverby one that comes in like once every like 4 bars or so, I'm actually applying some processing on just this individual snare. And then on the bus, I'm like doing a little bit of compression, just a little bit of reverb, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, does that help? I love Smack Attack. I think it's great. I'm pretty sure it's a Waves plugin, if I remember correctly. I can't remember, but Waves has like a lot of really useful plugins. Great. Next question. Awesome. Let me see what time it is. Right now we're at 8:39. Can you raise your hand if you brought a track for feedback tonight? How many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, so quite a few. Great. So I think having an hour and a half just to go over track feedback should probably be pretty solid, I would think. And do we have a specific order for these?
Oh, yeah, they're signing up. But,
Oh, perfect. Oh, thanks for asking. Let me think real quick. I don't have anything coming up at the moment to promote. I will give a big shout out to Emergence Drum and Bass. We're a collective of femmes, queers, non-binary people that love drum and bass. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Caviera. They're awesome, really amazing DJ who spins a variety of genres as well, like drum and bass music. I think they spin some house as well. They started the collective along with some other folks, I believe, but that takes place every month at Diffusion. So I want to give a shout out to that specifically. I think the next show is actually this Saturday at Diffusion. So yeah, if you love drum and bass, really great underground night to go to every month. Outside of that, I don't really have anything else lined up. Things have been really stressful recently. Just the general vibe, but the general political climate is not great. So right now I'm just trying to devote any extra time I have to either advocacy work, volunteer work, just really anything to make it feel like I have a little more control over the situation and not feel as helpless. As y'all can probably guess, as a trans woman, it's a stressful time to be alive right now. I mean, it's always stressful. I mean, the fight's never over. Just in the last 2 years alone, over 500 anti-trans bills have been passed across the U.S. So this isn't anything new. It's been bubbling up, and now it's just kind of exploding. And as a trans producer, as just a trans citizen, I've just been more focused on that recently, just trying to make sure I'm staying aware of everything going on, so that way I can know what valid concerns I can have versus maybe what's just being blown out of proportion by the media to make us stressed and click on things. But that doesn't mean I've given up on the dream of producing. I'm still working on co-producing that project I kind of mentioned at the moment. And who knows, maybe I start a new project, maybe I don't. Only time will tell. I kind of want to make sure my money's right before I make a big push again. Because I was kind of mentioning before, it's just so financially taxing to put so much money into marketing and getting the art created. Just that entire process. So for now, I'm just hanging out, chilling, continuing to work on music, sort of, in a very relaxed and low pressure kind of way. And when the time feels right, probably gonna make a go at putting out some new music under Lucy LaFreak and Sporadica, which are the current projects I'm working on, or I might just start a new project. We'll see. I've kind of played with the idea of maybe having an anonymous project at some point, kind of take the ego out of it, make it just something super kind of mysterious and not tell anyone about it and just sort of hide behind this anonymous persona and just drop a bunch of music. But I'm not sure if I will do that or not, and if I do, you'll never know. Maybe I already did. You're right. Yes, you can never really put a price on the element of surprise, right? So I don't know what the future holds for me at the moment. Might go to law school, which is a recent development. I almost applied for law school years ago, but I was nah. And then now with everything that's going on, I'm oh, yeah, maybe I should get involved in the law, so that way I can more articulately and intellectually have some sort of impact on legislation and what's happening. But we'll see. That's quite the investment, and I'll have to see if I have the energy to even do that. But yeah, so as far as I know, folks are signing up for track feedback. If y'all are ready, would be more than happy to take the first track for feedback. And oh, a 5-minute break. I would love that personally. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll reconvene and do some track feedback. Does that sound good? Yay, okay.
Yeah, it's this. Even these batteries are